Beneath the vast silence of the Sahara, the stars do not merely shine. They burn with a cold, ancient fire that has watched over every forgotten traveler. It is a darkness so complete that the sky becomes a living map, etched by the hands of the cosmos itself. And in this forsaken basin, far from the Nile's fertile embrace, something impossible emerged from the sand. A scattering of rough-hewn stones, deliberately placed by human hands over 7,000 years ago, forming a circle that predates the pyramids, predates Stonehenge, and predates almost every monument we thought marked the dawn of civilization. They call it Nabta Playa, a name that now whispers through the corridors of archaeology like a half-remembered prayer. Imagine standing there at the edge of time, where the desert wind has eroded every trace of voice and footstep, leaving only those silent megaliths as witnesses. To the untrained eye, they might seem like random boulders left by a retreating glacier. But this is a desert of relentless thirst, not ice. The alignment was no accident. Each stone was hauled across the ancient playa, its position calculated with a precision that made later scholars question the timeline of human ingenuity. The central calendar circle points directly to the rising of Sirius, the brightest star that signaled the life-giving flood of the distant Nile. But the deadliest irony is that the people who built this celestial machine were not a grand empire of pharaohs. They were nomadic cattle herders, wandering families who paused at the edge of a seasonal lake to carve an observatory into the skin of the earth. Within that fragile moment, a flickering flame of astronomical genius ignited in a place that had no cities, no writing, and no metal tools. Then, like a candle starved of oxygen, their world evaporated. The monsoon rains shifted north around 5,300 years ago. The lake dried into a bleeding wound of cracked clay, and the desert swallowed their pastures whole. They packed their fragile lives onto their backs and bid farewell to the stone giants who were now pointing at a sky that had betrayed them. This is the point where mainstream history draws a comfortable, straight line. The survivors drifted east to the Nile Valley, carrying whispers of star lore that would eventually crystallize into the splendor of Egypt. It is a neat, satisfying narrative, a closing of the loop that makes us feel as though the puzzle is solved. It fractures into 1,000 missing pieces, a labyrinth of ghost temples and lost successors that refuse to be found. Where, I ask you, are the star temples of Nabta Playa's direct descendants? Did a tradition so astronomically sophisticated simply vanish, absorbed quietly into the mud brick of the pre-dynastic villages? Or did it leave behind a hidden sacred geography, a map of stone circles and standing megaliths still sleeping beneath the dunes, waiting for a shift in the flowing sand to wake them? The evidence for what came next is maddeningly thin, like a shattered mirror reflecting only slivers of a cosmic face. Some researchers point to the Black Mummy site in the Libyan desert, where a child was buried with a stone aligned to the stars, suggesting a similar celestial reverence. Others theorize that the primordial mounds of the Nile, the foundations of the first Egyptian temples, were built directly upon the accumulated knowledge of the Nabta priest astronomers. There is a whisper, often dismissed by stricter academics, that the true successors moved not east, but deeper into the heart of the wasteland, chasing a sacred geography visible only to them. You can almost feel them out there in the dark, can't you? A ghostly caravan disappearing into a sea of shadows, carrying not gold, but a map of the infinite embedded in memory. It is in these desperate gaps between a fallen megalith and a rising pyramid that the human imagination scrambles to fill the void. Where archaeology falters, The desert itself seems to guard the answer with a ferocious, silent pride. The modern search for these successor sites is less an excavation and more a quiet, slow battle against the Sahara's relentless geological respiration. Satellite archaeology has become our new oracle, sweeping frequencies over the landscape to peer beneath miles of beige monotony. Occasionally, a dark smudge appears on the screen, a geographical anomaly that screams of human design. An expedition is sent, tires chewing through the gravel, water being rationed like liquid gold, hearts beating with the pure, undiluted hope of discovery. And almost always, the anomaly turns out to be an ancient dried riverbed that crumbles the once solid hypothesis to dust. The few candidate sites that have been located in the Western Desert are notoriously difficult to date, their alignments partially collapsed. Their originals, stellar targets lost to the slow drift of precession. A stone circle that once opened perfectly to the belt of Orion 6,000 years ago now swings lazily toward an empty patch of unrecognizable sky, its function erased by the imperceptible wobble of the Earth's axis. It becomes a cipher without a key, a locked door where the combination has been changed by the very universe the builders tried to map. One compelling theory suggests we are looking for the wrong thing entirely. Perhaps the successors did not build with heavy stone at all, having learned a bitter lesson in the impermanence of physical monuments from their abandoned calendar. Think of that for a moment. A civilization that measured its existence not in granite, but in geometry. We are creatures of the artifact. We modern searchers. We need the weight of a hand axe or the edge of a sherd to believe in a human past. But if a people chose to build temples out of pure math and fading equinox light, would we even recognize their genius if we stumbled into the middle of their cathedral? It is a chilling thought that the greatest monument might leave absolutely no footprint. Perhaps that is why the Sahara feels so haunted, not by ghosts of the dead, but by the ghosts of a sublime intelligence that chose to be invisible. This cold uncertainty has not deterred the obsessed, however. It feeds them. There is a specific breed of archaeologist who is drawn to the deep desert like an anchorite to a cave, seeking a silence so absolute that the only sound is the static of their own neural electricity. For them, Nabta Playa is an open wound, a tantalizing prologue to a book whose remaining pages have been set alight by the sun. They spend decades tracing the movement of ancient ostrich eggshell fragments and flint blades, trying to build a highway from the lost lake to the fertile floodplain. And yet, the further they walk, the more the desert erases the path behind them. The human obsession with what came next is born out of a quiet terror. We cannot bear the thought that a fire so bright could be extinguished without a witness. We tell ourselves that time reveals all things, but as you stand in a place like Nabta Playa, you begin to suspect that time is actually a master illusionist, a great concealer. The desert is not merely a backdrop. It is an active agent, a hungry entity that grinds granite to dust, swallows ziggurats, and reburies what we dare to uncover. It rarely yields to our chronology. Clockwork of carbon dating becomes laughably fragile when applied to a landscape that has been continuously re-sculpted by wind for 70 centuries. A grain of sand blows across a buried threshold, and 1,000 years of history are erased in an afternoon. So we are left suspended in a terrible limbo between absolute proof and undeniable intuition. We know the aridity pushed the Nabateans away. We know the Nile soared to glory, and we suspect there was a transfer of cosmic knowledge. But the physical, unbroken chain of star temples remains missing. The silence that follows that admission is the sound of a dark labyrinth with no exit. Perhaps the most haunting theory is that the chain was intentionally broken. Some fringe historians have floated the idea that a catastrophic climatic event, far more violent than a slow drought, scattered the astronomer-priests so violently that they reverted to a bare survival mode, dropping their sacred stones like ill-fated cargo. The weathered megaliths at Nabta Playa do not look like they were lovingly abandoned with a plan for the future. They look like a desperate farewell. There is a profound, existential loneliness there that seeps into your bones. The loneliness of a species touchingly trying to argue with the gods of weather using mathematics. We stand on the shoulders of such fragile geniuses, and we don't even know their real names. The constellations they measured have shifted. The Nile they never knew they would feed has changed its course. And the yellowing journals of the modern explorers who search for the successors will one day crumble as well. Is it a failure of archaeology, or is it the ultimate victory of a tradition that transcended the need for matter? Maybe the true successor to the Nabta Playa Star Temple is not buried under a dune, but is etched into the very process of how you and I look up at the moving sky tonight. That resonant question is the only real artifact they left behind. You are standing now, not in a desert, but in a question, one that stretches from a Neolithic stone circle to the glowing screen of a satellite, and has no definitive answer. The abyss of history does not gaze back with hostility, but with a patient, unblinking indifference that is perhaps more terrifying than any curse. As the dry wind sings through the standing stones, it carries no words, only the cold, pure mathematics of a forgotten origin. The sand will continue to shift, perhaps revealing a new megalith tomorrow, perhaps burying the existing one deeper. Time is a thief who rarely gives back what he has stolen, and the star temples we seek may be sleeping in a vault we cannot open. So the next time you gaze upon a perfect night, let your eye drift to Orion and to Sirius, the silent keepers of the Nabta Basin. The ultimate secret is not where the successors are buried, but whether a map of the cosmos can ever truly be lost, or if it simply waits for the right silence to be heard again. Beneath the sands, the stones remember what the books have forgotten, and that is the enduring, spine-tingling mystery of the star temples of Nabta Playa's lost successors.